Good evening, welcome to the cross-stitch cooldown. Sorry, I'm working on different intros, different ways to modulate my voice so I sound chipper, sound ready, sound awake. Check the smiley, check the mood. We are going strong, ready to go. We've been working on pin stitching being these single white stitches here in a color called E940. So that's what we've got up there. And this is a glow-in-the-dark floss, and we just have a few more of these before we're going to be getting on to some back stitching. So let's knock out the last couple of these, and then we'll do some back stitching. So we've done this here, and we have one that's a row below, and oh goodness, 4, 5, gap of 6 to the left. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is the bottom left of my stitch. And so because it's a pin stitch, we are going to begin by splitting some of these weaves here because we're going to be using those splits in the weave. So we'll pre-split them a little bit there. And you can see them over here. All right. I don't have a lot of floss left on my needle, so I need to be a little conservative here. But I only have, I think, 1 or 2 more of these stitches to do before the back stitching, so I don't need a lot of floss. So we're finishing our locking stitch. There's our locking stitch. Nice and subtle, nice and small. Now we'll do some trimming here. We'll get rid of these loose ends. Off they go. And we'll do a normal cross stitch right on top of where we put that locking stitch. And then another. We might get a little bit of fuzz coming through on this one. We'll be on the lookout for it. Nope, nice and clean. There we are. And then we will do another locking stitch to close it off. So the locking stitch to close it off, or to finish it up, we'll split the weave here on the back. Like that, that's perfect. And then we will go down somewhere through the middle of the stitch that we've just made. And we kind of just poke around with the needle to find a spot with minimal resistance. And then we do a locking stitch up at the top, centered between the top 2 holes. And then again, we poke around to try to find a spot with minimal resistance. We dive back down through the middle. We cut our thread, our floss. And we're done with that one. And we'll increment our stitch count. 5082. 79% complete. I got a bit of a weird thing looking here. Let's take a look at this one that we just did here. It's kind of funky. So you can kind of see just a little white right there. Looks like I may have missed a little bit, but I'm not worried about it. We're going to leave it. And I think, you know, we're going to have to come back to this region anyway. I'm not going to be back stitching this sun. So we're going to be coming back to this region with this color in the future in order to stitch this V. And so I'm going to leave off this pin stitch here because I don't have a lot of floss left and I don't want to restring it. So let's move on then to some back stitching. So back stitching is actually not something I typically do on my cross stitches. I just don't like the look of it. It makes it look too elegant, too outlined, too sketched. So I normally just keep it pixel art style. I just have little X's. Each X represents a different color, and I keep it like that. But back stitching is a form of outlining. It's a way to add emphasis or to add some finer details. And it breaks that pixel look. It can jump over in weird diagonals. It just breaks all the rules. This cross stitch, there is back stitching in the pattern that I purchased, and you can see an example of it here on this blaster. So see all of the E940, kind of the border around it. See how it just trims out the blaster nicely? That's the type of work that we'll be doing. You can also see it around the little stars on the left. That's a good example of taking these yellow blobs that look vaguely like stars and then backstitching this nice star-shaped pattern onto them. So for the backstitch, normally when I'm stitching, I will use 3 pieces of floss, or 3 strands of floss, excuse me, 3 strands of floss. And that gives me this nice kind of puffy, poofy stitch look. You can still see that they're crosses, but they're just much more, especially like you can see in this comet here, or this meteor, they just look more kind of bulbous and round. If you use 2 strands when you're stitching normally, you'll end up with very defined X's, and you'll see a lot of the cloth between them. So here you can see a little bit of the Aida cloth there with the X's, but if I were using 2 strands, it would look like a bunch of small X's. I say all that to tell you that for the back stitching, I do use 2 strands in order to keep that fine detail needed. I want it to be visible, so I don't do a single strand, but I want it to be effective. So this alien up here, normally I do it in reading order. So I would start in top left, and I would work my way to the right and go line by line. But this alien is too close to the edge of the hoop for me to effectively backstitch it, I believe. I don't think I'd be able to pull it off. So I'm not going to start on the alien. I'm going to wait until there's a hoop reset, and because I have to do his eyes anyway. So I'll wait till I reset the hoop. So I'm going to start on this globe here. Nice and easy one. And I'm going to do all the stars at once, by the way. So I'm going to do all the stars in one big fell swoop. So I'm going to do all the different elements and then the stars. So the Earth, as you can see in the pattern, it's a little hard to see, but you can see this faint white line going around the Earth. Essentially, I'm just rounding it off. I'm taking these jagged corners here and I'm rounding it off with a diagonal. The version of backstitching I do, there are versions that would literally, you would jump your backstitch from this hole down to this hole in order to do that line. I really dislike that look. It ends up with a big long unstitched piece of floss. I probably go too far in the other direction. I do a stitch for every hole. It's kind of a personal preference. It's what you want it to look like. This is the method. I want it to just be as granular and as pixelated as possible. So when I cut across here, I have it go in each of the holes. So you really start your backstitch very much the same way you start any other type of traditional X-shaped stitch, where you tuck your needle into some of this, nice and tight back there, maybe somewhere else. How about, there's a few, that'll work. So you tuck your floss under some stitches and you leave yourself a little tail, and then you just pick a spot to dive out and start. So let's start oh, it's so tight back here. Let's start right here. I think I could probably get out through this hole without offending too many sensibilities. Yep, that'll do it. And you'll pull till you feel just a little bit of resistance, because you don't want to accidentally pull that through on the back. It's not totally locked down. There, just a little. You can see the tightening it there. Perfect. All right. And then we're going to cut. We're going to go clockwise around this globe. And we'll dive in here. And we just cut a diagonal right over that. Look at that. Okay. And then I've come out in the upper right of where I'm going to be doing my next stitch, and then I'm going to dive back down, and you'll catch a little groove starting in the corner here. Isn't necessarily a great example. So real quick, just how the stitch counter is going to work on this one. The stitch count is not based on the individual little stitches I do. It's based on a software count that assumes that those 2 stitches I just did are actually 1 stitch. So you're not going to see the stitch count increment up until I finish entire lines of stitching. So in this case, those 2 stitches now represent a full stitch, and I'll up the stitch count. And now I'm going to work my way along the top edge of the globe. And you basically jump ahead 1, like that, and then I will jump ahead, and come back, see? Easy. This is not a slow process. You can actually get cruising on these back stitches. It gets a little, but well, let me give a caveat there. You can cruise along on these back stitches if you're just doing a row like this. Let's take this opportunity really quick to clean up these strands. I can foresee them getting in our way later. All right. You can cruise along if you're doing this nice, easy kind of border. Once you start detailing the fingers of the alien or going around in circles here, it can get a little more intricate. But when you're just cruising along here, low stress. It is getting a little muddy on the back. I might start marking from the front where I want my needle to come through. Open up the hole a little bit in the back. So that's me marking it right there, so that when I flip it around I can see buried in that green where I need to look. It closed up almost all the way. There it is. And I will go up and to the left to round off the globe there. Up the stitch count because I finished that top row. And I'm going to definitely mark from the front again. Right there is where I want to pop out. And I felt a lot of resistance. So yeah, the odds of landing that by just guessing on the back. See how it's through that big old knot there? It's not a knot, it's just a lot of floss. Marking it from the front, it's really going to make it easier to make sure I come through the back in the appropriate spot without splitting any of the threads or messing it up, coming out the wrong spot. All right, there's another stitch complete. We will mark again the front. I want to come out right there so we can start working our way down the side of the globe. See my little clear hole shining through for me. And down we go. I've mentioned it a couple times. Oh, sorry, that was a little high. Did you see what I did there? Nothing too special. I just lost track of the camera. There we go. I'm really excited to see just how much this floss glows. I've kind of cupped my hands and looked at it like in the store to see if it glows before I spent my hard-earned 50 cents on it. But I haven't ever seen it stitched into a pattern before, or into an actual cross stitch, and seen it glow in that situation. I'm hoping that it's very pronounced. Going through a lot of effort for it to not be pronounced. I also hope that it's fairly long lasting, because I've been working on this cross stitch for quite some time, and I hope it doesn't expire or go bad. All right. Working our way down the globe. Coming down to the bottom right, so we're going to be cutting another diagonal. And when we get to the bottom here, we will up our stitch count again. See, this doesn't feel like cross-stitching to me. I don't mind doing it in this case, because it's what the pattern calls for, and I want to be true to the woman who did the pattern. But I'm not feeling it. All right, so we just finished going down the right side. So we'll increment the stitch counter. Up it goes. Still only 79% remaining. We're really pushing for that 80. I really want to get to 80% remaining. Well, with 6,418 stitches, it takes a while to go up every percentage point. So we've been kind of stranded on 79% for a couple of videos now. The pin stitches just go so slowly. It takes a while to, you can work for 2 hours and only get a couple dozen stitches. There's another one. Still at 79%. Drat it all. Mark the front. Let me see that hole right there. There it is. I don't think I need to mark the front on this one. The last one was fairly easy to spot. Yep, felt that one there. Spotted it, felt it. Going for it. Exactly, yeah. If we can repeat performance here. There it is. And there's that. Working our way around. I wonder how many of these we'll get through tonight. How many different planets or celestial bodies we will manage to wrap some back stitches around. I think that's where I want to go. No, I need to go one farther. Right there. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm using 2 strands for this back stitch. Okay, so let's increment our stitch count. Still at 79%. Mark the front. Lay eyes on that hole and pop through the back. So it can sometimes look pretty subtle, but it really does when it's all done. You can tell it's created a more refined look. Less cartoony and more artistic. Another way you can do that is to really just up the resolution and the number of colors. If you use 50,000 colors in a cross stitch, and your cross stitch is 30 feet long, it's going to look photorealistic. Because photos are, like on a computer screen, photos are just pixels, right? So if you just use pixels, you just make it really hyper resolution-y, you know, like a 4K cross stitch, you can make it look as realistic as you want. I wonder, that'd be kind of fun one day. Maybe if I get super bored, or if someone can convince me or gives me a compelling reason to, I could do like a 720, a 1080, a 4K, and an 8K cross stitch, where I treat each of the stitches as a pixel, and I can do some kind of resolution demo, or like it'd be fun is there are little infographic type things that demonstrate the size of like a 4K monitor relative to like 1080 and 720, and it kind of shows them overlaid on each other as different rectangles of different sizes. And it'd be fun to do a little sampler like that. And then if you get just super awful, you could make some kind of resolution joke, you know, New Year's resolution, or who knows. I've only been a dad for 8 months, so my dad joke game isn't totally up to speed yet. I'm slowly working my way there. Alright, and we are almost done, so I'm going to mark the front for this last stitch. We will up the stitch count. We will tie the sucker off, and we will move on probably to the sun. I think the sun would be a great thing to do some backstitching on next. All right, look at that, gorgeous. Let's up the stitch count. 5090, still at 79%. We'll tie this off. It'll be pretty straightforward. We'll just pop it through somewhere. We don't need to make it too complex. There we go. Easy. All right, we'll cut it off. If you spy closely, I'll try not to burden you with it, but slashed my left thumb with a knife today at work. It was one of those cuts you do with a knife where you say to yourself, I could easily cut myself if I'm not careful, so I'll just be careful. And then you immediately cut yourself. It was one of those moments. So I'm missing a nice chunk off the end of my left thumb pad, but it eventually stopped bleeding, and I'm not bleeding all over my cross stitching, so we should be good. All right, we're going to start up here, and we're going to do a very similar thing. We're just going to go clockwise around the sun. Around the sun. Just like we do once a year around the sun. You know what I didn't do? I didn't start that right. I gotta tuck this under a little bit first. So let's get this started all proper like here. There it is. There's no good way to tie off a back stitch unless you tuck it like this. Or if there is a good way, I don't know about it. I guess I could look it up. All right, we'll go up one. There, does that feel good? Nope, that's terrible. This is why I mark from the front, because when I'm just blindly poking around at the back, I just look, it's amateur hour. All right, let's mark it from the front. Amateur hour, discounted rates, lower quality stuff. Okay. Pull till you feel just a little bit of resistance. There it is. And our first, there it is, nice and subtle. I can't start yanking on it too hard yet because I don't have a whole lot of stitches in, so there's still a little loosey-goosey, but we'll mark that from the front. Barely see it back there, but I spotted it. I got it. Now, after that stitch, I can start tugging and being more aggressive, and you can barely see the honest. Okay, so theoretically, I am back in action. That's what it looks like. Oh, there we go. Back in action. So that's what it looks like when your computer, right in the middle of your live stream, just decides that it has had enough of life and doesn't want to keep on living. So that was an exercise in rebooting as fast as possible, getting everything back open and running, and getting back to the stream. So as I was saying, as we were working our way across the sun, sorry about that. Since I'm only using 2 strands and I'm going between the stitches when I'm backstitching around the sun, it's very subtle. You can barely even see the backstitching in here. But you can. Ultimately, you can see it, and it does have an effect. So we're going to do it just for the sake of completion, because it needs to be there. We're going to backstitch all the way around the sun, and it's going to follow the same rules as the backstitch around the earth, when you get to the corners. The corners, we're going to cut diagonals across the fronts of the corners. So as we near the right side here, we'll be finishing up that stitch, at least the way my software counts it. So there it is. Still at 79% complete. I feel like, here, whew, see the little mood update? That's the, I got everything back up and running again. Sorry about that, everybody. Do these 2 stitches to get down around the corner here. Ooh, that was very tight. There's something going on back there. That is going to be crowded. Yeah. There it is. And then right there. Still at 79%. Maybe 80 is mythical. It's like the unicorn percentage where it just can never be achieved. I hope not. It'd be a real downer. I think I just totally lost. I marked it from the front and then just completely lost it. Where am I going? Where is that? Right there at the confluence of those 2 colors. Exactly. Confluence. There's your SAT word of the day. Usually used to talk about rivers, but really just where any 2 streams of differing somethings collide and mix and hit. That's what I'm assuming the definition is. It's not like I'm looking this up here. It's just how I use it. Confluence. It's a mingling and a merging. Happens a lot in cross stitching. All your different colors and lines and strands. You know what man, it's really tightly packed, even marking it from the front. You know, I discovered on YouTube today, which was kind of fun. A couple of new YouTube channels. Discovered and I can put links in the description on this. I discovered a guy who just goes and blows tons of cash in arcades and shows you how good he has gotten at winning various arcade games because he spent $30 bajillion getting good at them. You saw him do fun things like win the claw machine like over and over and over again, and lose over and over and over again due to the magic of editing. Not so much of that. And then he took $250 in quarters and he pumped them into this cool quarter pushing slide pushy game thing, which is kind of neat. Of the $250, I think he ended up like $17 in the hole. So then the question you ask yourself is, did you have $17 worth of enjoyment playing the quarter pusher game? I enjoyed watching him do it for free. That was my enjoyment. And then I watched him just kind of play a few games. He did there's a game with like a key. His prize is hanging from hooks, and you dictate where a big key goes up and tries to unlock a prize. And he won a $300 Visa gift card, also pretty cool. So watched that channel, and then I watched a channel of a guy who knows more about US pennies than anybody in the world has any right to know about US pennies. It was really fun though, because it gave me some potential ideas for this channel. He bought a box. He bought 4 boxes of pennies, all circulated, all from the same bank. And this dude has a custom mat. It's like a mouse pad, but it's bigger. And I'm sure he just bought it custom online after he designed it. But it has all these different regions to set the different pennies, to sort them. And it's got a list printed on it of certain pennies that he's looking for, the years and the defects or the mints or things like that. And it was this great big neoprene flat work surface. Would also be great back in the day when I was into Pokemon cards, back in the heyday of middle school. It would have been super cool to have your own big custom Pokemon battle map. Alas, not so much anymore. So I would be buying it. I could see a world where, while I'm cross-stitching, you know, when I set my hoop down, I could set it on the mat and you would have maybe some branding, you know, maybe my logo. Could have a spot for me to put all the different floss. I could have one for like each project, and it would say some stats about it or show it like in completion, a name. I don't know. I'd be interested in ideas of what my custom mat could look like, but it would go there, right? Like it would be all back here. Look at all this room. Oh, come on. You can focus. There you go, camera. Alright, so we just finished the bottom. Blink a minute. Still at 79%. We will mark from the front where this next stitch is going to have to come out. Ooh, that kind of disappeared on me. Let's see if that was right. Yeah, that was fine. Okay. From the front again. Running a little low on floss for marking from the front. So I'm going to have to bring out my secondary needle that I use just for marking. Okay. And we will finish wrapping our way around the bottom left corner of the sun. Still at 79%, marked from the front. Out through this hole here, and we will cruise our way up the left side of the sun. Also really looking forward to seeing what it looked like when I dropped out for a couple minutes. What does YouTube do when the streamer goes AWOL? I can already tell it didn't stop the stream because when I logged in all that time was still clicking along. So were you guys just staring at black? Or were you staring at my channel art? Who knows? I can mark that one with a different needle. There we go. This side might be a little tedious now that I'm having to mark it with a separate needle here. Just a couple more steps involved. There we go. It's just so tight back here. It's really important for me to know exactly where I'm headed, so I don't accidentally split. Especially with this glow in the dark, theoretically if I get a stitch in the wrong spot, it will literally glow. And there is nothing worse than a mistake actually glowing and drawing attention to itself. Yep. Just a few more of the left side. So yeah, so this dude with the pennies, he found a bunch of awesome pennies. He's super psyched, super jazzed. Found some copper ones, found some wheat pennies, found some super old ones. And I wish, you know, his hobby is awesome because you don't really spend any money on it. You're buying money for your hobby. So like if you ever need a new hobby, you could just like, or like if you need extra cash, like your hobby is money. Didn't turn out very well. Okay, I gotta mark this one. Right there, I want it to come out right there. And of course my needle came unthreaded, so bear with me for just a half second. Handy magnet for picking needles up off a flat surface. Never go home without it, leave home without it. There we go, needle threaded. This hole is marked right there. Don't lose it. Keep your eyes on it. There it is. All right. Down and to the left. Barely enough to mark that one. I can see it there though. I know exactly where it is. It's gonna be right there. Sorta. Kinda. There it is. No. I need to go to the right of that. I need to go right there. That's where I want to be. Where is that? There it is. Same spot. Sons of guns. The sun is kicking my butt. Come on. Right there. That's where we want to go. Okay, got it. Good riddance, you silly sun. Done. With the sun. Let's tie this off. We'll head this way with it. Cut it under just a few stitches there. Alright. Trim, trimmery, trim, trimmery, trim, trim the floss. And keep the back clean. Do, floss. When in doubt, rhyme with the words you just used. Okay. So you can see the back stitching is done on this one. A little crazy on the left side there. That one's a little funny looking. I wonder if there's anything I can do about that, or if that's just the way it is. I think that might just be like a twist. I think that just might be the way it is. Don't focus too hard on that as I zoom in. Don't focus on that. Okay. So next, oh come on camera, I didn't mean don't focus. There we are. Yikes, taking everything so literally. Okay. Let's bring our pattern back and we'll look at these clouds. So we have these clouds here. They need some back stitching. Might as well work on them for the next 15 minutes or so. So let's get, wow, that's fuzzy. Let's clean that up. That's got no business being like that. There we go. Little haircut. So we will begin by getting our needle kind of locked through some of these. Just gotta be careful you don't grab any of the stitches on the other elements. Oh, stop. There we go. There we go. Okay. We're gonna just guess for the first one. Let's pop down through and see if it's somewhere useful. That is useful. We can actually begin right there. That's where we're gonna start, and we'll go up. Pull till you feel resistance. There it is. You don't want to tug too hard until you have a couple, 2, 3, 4 stitches in. There's one stitch. That was one too far to the right, so we'll go one to the left here. That felt right. There it is. And then down diagonal. There's a stitch. This one should be easy because I've already punched through it accidentally. Yep, there it is. We'll do 3 stitches across the top before diving down around the right. Again, just like the earth, going along the top is easy because there isn't a lot of pre-stitched floss that I'm dodging around. I've got holes that I can see, holes that I can feel. There it is. Still at 79%. Killing me. One of these days, guys. Let's trim this up here, so it doesn't get in our way as we work our way down the other side. And let's guess. Where does that put us? That's a nice clean hole. I need to go one up from that. That's what I was afraid of, because that's a bit of a mess here. So let's just guess again. How about that? What's that do? Terrible. Right in the middle of all sorts of floss and thread and things. I think we got to mark this one from the front, guys. I'm sorry. It's a little extra work. I want it to look good. Alright. We're going to come out right where that needle is, which is kind of in the middle of this mess here. I think that was it. All disoriented. Oh, it's a tilt-a-whirl red. Okay. That was not graceful. Apologies for the seasickness. Still at 79%. It's almost as if the only thing I care about is completion, which is not true. It's also about the journey, but also about completion. We hit 80. That was the stitch. 5,103rd stitch was the stitch that got us to 80%. That's exciting. Now we go for 81. Wrap around my cloud corner here. And I'll be cutting a diagonal again. Okay. And then I'll cut a diagonal. Oh, smash everything into the camera. Serves you right, camera. You ain't no good, no help to no one. Alright. Let's try that. That was a total crapshoot. That was a very respectable guess and will get me exactly where I need to be for that stitch. Awesome. I think we're just one stitch away from finishing this cloud. I think I just go up one. Somewhere up here. No. I'm 2 stitches away. Can I go over one? And then I have a diagonal to make. Just kind of up and over. And we're just going to kind of guess and see where that puts us. Exactly where we want to be. Yes! Boom. That cloud, consider it backstitched. That's right, cloud. I wonder what that cloud represents. I asked that question last time. Like, is that ice? Is it water in space? Which seems unlikely. Who knows? Okay. See how nice and trimmed out it is? This is a really good opportunity to compare blocky versus the backstitching. How the backstitching kind of rounds it out. So you can compare the other 2 clouds to the one we just backstitched. It just kind of makes it a little rounder. It's nice. Okay. I'm going to drop my volume a little bit here. Seems like during the computer crash it reset my volume settings, so apologies for that. I should be a little quieter now. And have a little less background noise. Okay, so I need to clean my work area. And then I need to grab some more backstitch floss, 2 strands of E940. Thread it. And in our last 9 minutes together, let's start work on one of these other clouds. How about this one? This doesn't seem like a bad cloud. Get started by getting our needle in there. I use a big needle. The downside is it's got a really big eye. Sometimes it's hard to pull through. And I'm gonna just guess that right there is probably a spot that we want to be. Well, do we want to mix it up, guys? No, let's not mix it up. I don't like mixing it up. Let's go clockwise still. I was thinking maybe we'd go counterclockwise, but that's just a little too wild for tonight. I'm getting a little tired, so I don't want to accidentally make a mistake. So there's a stitch. We'll mark from the front where we want to go here. I missed a hole. I punched through something that was not the hole in the Ada cloth. Punched through something. Sorry about the camera there. Be very careful. What's going on here? I got some funkiness. I split the weave when I actually stitched the cloud, and I think I snuck through a hole that I pre-spaced accidentally back in the day. There we go. That. We'll work our way clockwise. 2 stitches here, and then we will dive back down the right side. And as we get closer to this side, I think right before we head down, we will trim up the excess floss from when we started and tied it down. Mark it from the front. Okay, let's trim this up. Here, just the 2 strands, because we're back stitching. Normally that would be 3. Just worked our way around that corner, so now we're gonna start working our way down. Marking the front. Okay, and then we'll cut diagonal down this way. And don't worry, I'm not perfect with the stitch count, so if I miss one, it's not going to be the end of the world. I do a check every once in a while. I do a count just to make sure I'm up to speed and I get all my numbers dialed in, so I don't have to maintain perfect accuracy as I go. Because I get distracted when I'm chatting with you guys. And every once in a while I miss one. It's okay. It's no big deal. We recognize, we acknowledge, we forgive, we correct, we move on. acknowledgize. That has no business existing as a word. Unless it's like acknowledging your failure and needing to apologize at the same time. So it'd be like an acknowledgee or an acknowledgize situation. I don't know. It could work. I think we'll get all the way around this cloud and then knock off for the night. Go a little longer to make up for the computer crash. Ooh, I did that totally out of order. Alright, that's going to involve some fun jumping around here. I accidentally skipped a stitch, which is no big deal. I can just go back and do this one here. And then pop up here. Cruising, cruising, cruising. Trying to finish this cloud. The marking from the front is probably one of my most used tricks. I just like to know exactly what I'm looking for when I flip it over and go to the back. I don't want to try to guess and count and do all that mess. I like to just flip it over and see a big hole that's been pre-spaced for me and dive into that one. Second, most useful tip that I use if I pin stitched anymore, that pre-splitting of the weave on the pin stitch, I'm still just tickled pink about that. It's one of the, it's been a while since I've like made a discovery while cross stitching, and that made me very happy when I figured out how to make those clean consistently by pre-splitting those. Check last. Actually, just check the beginning of this stream. I talked about it then, and then on the last stream that I did a lot of that. I think this is going to finish the outline of the cloud. It does. There's some backstitching inside the cloud I don't really want to do this evening just because I'm getting tired, but you can see there's like this little, if you look at the pattern here, there's like a little swoop on the inside, and I'll hit that next time. So for tonight, we'll call it a night. I'll tie this off. Let's see here. Made some good progress. Finished up my pin stitches and got back stitches around quite a few things. 2 clouds, a sun, and an earth. That's actually really great progress, guys. We are going to finish this soon. I know it seems like it goes slow, but man, we are cooking with gas. There it is. Look at that. Trimming this bad boy out. All right, thanks for joining. Have a lovely evening. Enjoy your Thursday, and see you next time.